Hey everybody, so today I'll be talking about my protest tactic for this week, which is culture jamming. And so before we go any further, I'd like to give you a history of culture jamming. So culture jamming would originate from the practices of detourment during 1950s France by situational internationalist leader Guy Debord. And deterrent translates to deflection or hijacking with a purpose of turning away from a norm. And in 1984, the term culture jamming would be coined by the audio collage band Negativland, and their lyrics would include socio-political commentary having a sharp situational edge to it. And in the back here, I have Guy Debord, and his book here, Society of Spectacle, is one of his most famous books to date. So next, what is culture jamming? So culture jamming is a collective of expressive protest tactics that aim to critique and disrupt the flow of capitalist, political, and media culture that dominate daily life. So a couple examples of culture jamming could be media hoaxes or parodies. And my example here is the Max Headroom incident, which happened in the 1980s in Chicago. And basically this guy, who is still unknown to this day, intercepted this like news broadcast and basically pretended to be Max Headroom, who was the spokesperson for Coca-Cola at the time. And he would say his catchphrases like catch the wave and all that, basically. And the next example could be literature. And my example for this would be Adbusters. And I'll get into Adbusters a little bit later in this project. And my final example could be street art. And I don't remember exactly the guy who did this art piece, but he is known to go around and cover up basically like big corporation advertisements by implementing photos of protest or other tactics like that. So now a couple strengths and weaknesses of culture jamming. A couple strengths could be that it is easily viewable. And like my previous examples, some ways that culture jamming could be expressed is through billboards or social media and even graphic art like posters. And culture jamming can affect corporation sale revenues and reputation while also diminishing the power of the media. And culture jamming can also tap into global issues such as ecology and human rights. And a couple weaknesses of culture jamming is it's difficult to get consumers to stop buying their favorite product. An example of this would be 1990 Operation Push. And they had a boycott on Nike shoes, but it would not result well as many people, Nike shoes could be their favorite product. So it was hard for them to get to stop buying Nike shoes. And culture jamming is also not strong enough to serve as a base for an organization. If we look back into our text, we had that article about ACT UP and how they said that art is not enough, that there needs to be direct action. So you really need to get up into people's faces and make it known that, by getting to them, by invading the public, that's how you can really make a change. And so with culture jamming, the message could also be too ambiguous or not fully developed, leading the spectator to question what the message is and how they're supposed to feel. So as I said earlier, we had an article about ACT UP, and in that article, they talked about Grand Fury. So for this project, I really wanted to expand on that because they're really an interesting group. So they were formed in 1988, and they would serve as the propaganda office of ACT UP. And they looked to gain a political response from the general public by the usage of commercial advertising that would lead the viewer to a political conclusion. So that, they would question their morality and make them, decide like, how do I feel about what's going on in the current world? And through cleverly crafted wordplay, wit, and artwork, Grand Fury seek to disrupt the stigma around AIDS casted on by pharmaceutical corporations and figures and the government. So now here is the Grand Fury Collective. So in class, we looked at a couple of the Grand Fury artworks and the AIDS demographic link that's on Canvas. So here are a couple more that we didn't go over in class. And the first one is this one called He Kills Me. And this was aimed to tarnish the reputation of President Ronald Reagan and his government team due to their negative response towards the AIDS crisis. They would turn a blind eye to it or call it an infectious disease. And the second poster that I have is called All People with AIDS Are Innocent, and this was aimed at the prejudice and unequal treatment of AIDS patients in the medical community. I believe in the article it touched upon how they would label someone as quote unquote innocent if they had contaminated blood or not. I'm not very sure on that. And then the last poster would be AIDS, it's big business, but who's making a killing? And this was aimed at pharmaceutical corporations, their government allies, and Burroughs Wellcome, founder of AZT. So now, how do we see culture jamming in the present? So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be talking about Adbusters, which is a neo-situationist nonprofit magazine founded in 1989 in Vancouver, Canada. And it looks to critique consumer culture by using anti-ads. and it focuses mainly on environmental, social, and psychological issues. And next up, we have Guerrilla Girls, which was founded in 1984 at the Museum of Modern Art, and they are an anonymous feminist activist group protesting about misrepresentation of women in art, racism, sexism, and male patriarchy. And they would protest by using posters, stickers, books, talks, and art exhibitions that would all include humor and unique graphic designs. And last but not least, we have memes, and they have the potential to ignite political conversation amongst youth culture, and they focuses attention on audience as the creator often at times anonymous, and their main themes revolve around political and social issues. So that is not counterculture, that was my other presentation. This was culture jamming, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really hope you guys learned a thing or two. So yeah.